On the outskirts of an abandoned mining town stood a house that no one remembered building. The locals swore it wasn't there last year, but now it appeared old, gray, and slightly leaning, as if ashamed of its own existence that a journalist named Rhea Morgan, known for exposing government cover-ups, stumbled upon it while chasing a lead about missing people. The house wasn't on any map, yet her GPS froze right in front of it, coordinates locked, as if it wanted her to find it. When she stepped out of her car, the air grew thick, dense enough to taste the metal in it. The birds stopped singing, and from the cracked windows, faint light flickered, like a heartbeat trapped inside the walls. Rhea raised her camera, took a picture, and the image that appeared was different. The house in the photo had one extra window, a window that didn't exist in reality. That's where it began, not with what she saw, but with what her camera revealed. Rhea couldn't shake the unease. She zoomed into the extra window captured in her photo. It showed a faint silhouette of a person standing perfectly still. No face, just the outline. She checked again in real life. Still, no such window. The wall was solid stone, cold to the touch. The air around that part of the house carried a strange hum, like static in a radio signal. She decided to step inside. The door creaked open effortlessly, as though it had been waiting. Dust floated in pale beams of light, and the scent of something burnt lingered. Wood, metal, maybe flesh. The living room was oddly arranged. Every clock in the house read 3:33, though the batteries were corroded. The walls were covered with photos of people Rhea didn't recognize, until she reached the last frame on the wall. Her breath froze. It was heard at a photograph of herself, taken from behind, wearing the same jacket she had on right now. Her mind screamed for logic, but the silence of the house devoured her panic. Only one thing echoed in her thoughts. If this house wasn't here before, then who's been inside long enough to take my picture? The flickering light from upstairs blinked once, as if answering. She climbed the stairs, one trembling step at a time, her flashlight cutting through thick dust and shadows. At the end of the hallway, the last door was slightly open. A cold draft slipped through the gap, whispering her name in a tone that was eerily familiar, like her own voice, distorted and delayed. And behind that door was the window from the photo, but on this side of the wall, it wasn't looking outside, it was looking in. Rhea froze before the window that wasn't supposed to exist. It wasn't made of glass. It shimmered like liquid mercury, a faint reflection forming on its surface. When she leaned closer, the air around it pulsed, and her reflection blinked a second too late. Her own image stared back at her, but it wasn't her. The reflection was older, with hollow eyes, pale lips, and a faint crimson mark stretching down the neck. Like a burn, her heartbeat quickened. She whispered her own name, Rhea, and the reflection smiled. Then it moved, not mirroring her, acting on its own. It lifted a trembling hand, pressing against the other side of the glass-like surface. The wall groaned softly, as if it were breathing. Rhea stepped back. The air thickened with the metallic taste of electricity, the floorboards vibrating under her shoes. Her flashlight flickered and died. For a heartbeat, she stood in perfect darkness, the only light now coming from the silvery glow of that impossible window that a faint voice echoed from beyond it. Hers again, but fractured, pleading, layered in whispers. Get out, before it sees you too. The reflection's eyes rolled back white, and the surface of the wall rippled violently, spilling a faint mist into the room. On the other side, shapes moved, shifting, twisting, crawling toward the glass. The house creaked again, louder this time. Like a warning, Rhea ran. Down the stairs, through the hall. But every photo on the wall had changed. Now, every face was hers. Hundreds of them, all staring directly at her, mouths open in silent screams. The front door slammed shut before she reached it. And then, faintly from behind, the voice spoke again, this time no longer her own. You shouldn't have come back, Rhea. The silence after that voice was worse than any scream. It stretched through the corridors like a living thing, pressing against Ria's ears until she could hear nothing but her own pulse. The house, once a decaying shell of her family's past, now felt awake, aware, and hungry. Every step she took made the floor groan beneath her weight, but the sound didn't fade behind her. Instead, it followed, one step behind, then another. She turned sharply. Nothing there. Only the long corridor stretching into darkness, with that same impossible shimmer faintly reflecting the dim light behind her. Her mind screamed run, but her body hesitated. Something about the air felt charged, full of memory. It wasn't just a haunting, it was a loop. She could feel it, repeating something that had happened before. When she passed the study, the door swung open by itself. Inside, dust swirled in a thin spiral, forming a vague shape over the desk. Her late father's journal still lay open where she'd found it earlier. Only now, there were fresh words scrawled across the page, the ink still glistening. You can't destroy the house, because it remembers you. Her breath caught. She reached for the book, but the words began to blur and rearrange themselves, the ink twisting into new sentences as if being written by invisible hands. She is coming. Don't look at her reflection. Ria's gaze flicked up instinctively toward the dusty mirror across the room. Her reflection was there, only it wasn't moving like her. It stood still, smiling faintly. The smile widened, stretching unnaturally as the glass began to crack from the center outward. A faint hiss filled the room, not from the mirror, but from the walls. The wallpaper peeled away in strips, revealing old messages burned into the wood beneath. Names. Dozens of them, all with the same last name as hers. The house had taken them. Ria backed away, clutching the journal to her chest. The floorboards shifted, and suddenly the lights above flickered to life for the first time in years, one by one, illuminating a path down the hallway. A trail, leading toward the basement door. That was where it had started. That was where the voice first called her name when she was a child. The air grew colder. She could almost feel the house watching her, waiting for her to open the door again. And somewhere deep below, a heartbeat echoed back in answer to her own. Slow, rhythmic, alive. Ria stood at the top of the basement stairs, the air pressing down like a weight on her chest. The wooden door behind her creaked shut, sealing her in. The sound wasn't loud, but it carried finality. She gripped the lantern tightly, its faint orange glow barely touching the walls that spiraled downward into black. Each step seemed longer than the last, stretching into silence. The deeper she went, the more the world above her faded, replaced by the slow, distant sound of breathing that wasn't hers. When she reached the bottom, the air shifted. Moist, heavy, almost alive. The lantern flickered, throwing trembling light across the stone walls. Old photographs hung there, nailed into the brick. Some were faded beyond recognition. Others showed faces she knew, her parents, grandparents, even herself as a child, all standing in front of the house at different points in time. But their eyes were blacked out. Burned at the far end of the basement, an old furnace sat dormant. Its iron door was carved with symbols that hadn't been there before. She moved closer, the journal trembling in her hands. The writing on its open page began to bleed again, the words reforming like veins under skin. Do not open what remembers. Ria froze, but the furnace door rattled, metal scraping against metal from the inside. A low hum filled the air, a vibration that crawled up her bones. She felt something behind her, just close enough to disturb the dust around her shoulders. She turned, and for the first time, she saw her reflection again, standing at the bottom of the stairs. Only this time, it wasn't in glass. It was real. The reflection blinked slowly, and her voice, distorted and layered, whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." The lantern burst, plunging everything into darkness. Only the furnace remained faintly glowing red, like an eye opening in the dark. And then came the whispers, Dozens of voices overlapping, old and young, male and female, all saying the same thing in unison. The blood remembers. The furnace door cracked open. Warm air, no breath, escaped from within. Inside was not fire, but movement. Shadows crawling over each other like living ink, forming faces that screamed without sound. Rhea stumbled backward, clutching the journal as her reflection stepped forward. Its face was serene, calm, unlike her own trembling terror. "We waited for you," it said in perfect silence, the words forming directly in her mind. Now the cycle is complete. The ground shook. The photographs ripped themselves from the wall and swirled into the air, spiraling into the furnace's light. Every memory, every life the house had consumed, was being pulled back into one place. And in that moment, Rhea realized the truth. She hadn't returned to the house. The house had called her home. The walls began to pulse as if veins ran beneath the plaster. The air was thick with heat and memory. Every sound, every breath Rhea took, felt amplified, echoing through the house's hollow body like a living organism. The furnace roared to life behind her, no longer burning with fire, but with a swirling red light. The whispers fused into a single low hum. Not words, not music, something older, something knowing. Rhea stumbled backward, gripping the journal so tightly that its spine cracked. The ink on the open page flowed again, reshaping into sentences she hadn't written. The mirror remembers every face that looked away. She turned slowly, and there it was, the same cracked mirror from the study, now standing at the center of the basement floor as if the earth itself had birthed it. Its surface shimmered not with reflection, but with liquid, a thin sheet of red that rippled when she moved closer. Her reflection wasn't in it this time. Instead, the mirror showed the house itself, the walls crawling, rooms shifting, and at the center of it all, a small figure, her younger self, sitting on the staircase, holding the same journal. The memory slammed into her like cold water. She had been here before. The whispers she heard as a child, they weren't ghosts. They were fragments of her own memories, trapped and recycled by the house. As she watched, the child lifted her head in the mirror and looked directly at her, eyes glowing faintly red. Blood began to seep from the cracks across the mirror's surface, dripping onto the floor, forming intricate patterns that pulsed with light. The whispers returned, but this time they were clear, and they spoke with her own voice. "You can't destroy what you are." The floor shook violently. The mirror pulsed once more, and suddenly it shattered, not outward, but inward, pulling everything toward it. The air itself bent, dragging her forward. The journal was torn from her hands, sucked into the void of the broken glass. Rhea tried to resist, gripping the stone edge of the furnace, but the pull was too strong. Her reflection appeared in the shards, hundreds of them, each one whispering something different, secrets, regrets, warnings. Then she saw it. One reflection that wasn't hers. A man, standing just behind her in the real world. His eyes were pitch black, his smile the same as the shadows from before. He leaned close to her ear and whispered, "The house doesn't keep people, Rhea. It keeps promises." And before she could turn, he shoved her forward, straight into the mirror. Cold. Silence. Then, breath. She opened her eyes and found herself standing in the living room again. Morning light streamed through the windows. The dust was gone. The walls looked new. For a moment, it was as if the night had never happened. But on the table lay the journal, open, waiting. And this time, the handwriting inside wasn't her father's or her own. "Welcome home, Rhea." Sunlight filtered softly through the lace curtains, scattering golden patterns across the polished floorboards. The air smelled of cedar and new paint. It was peaceful, too peaceful. Rhea stood motionless in the living room, her breath shallow, eyes darting between the details that shouldn't exist. The broken furniture had been restored. The walls no longer bled. The silence was no longer heavy. It was clean, almost sterile. The house had rebuilt itself. Her clothes were spotless, her hands unscarred. The journal still sat on the coffee table, open to the same page that greeted her when she woke. "Welcome home, Ria. Don't let it fall apart again." Her pulse quickened. It wasn't just the line, it was what lay beneath the ink. The faintest outlines of older words, erased and rewritten dozens of times. Every welcome had been carved into the page like a ritual. She walked toward the window. Outside, the sky was a perfect blue. The garden, long since dead, now bloomed with impossible color. The old swing moved gently in the wind. Except there was no wind. She felt the air hum. The same sound she'd heard deep in the basement. Only softer, calmer, pretending to be something natural that a knock echoed behind her. 1.2.3. Her body froze. The front door, newly painted and gleaming white, stood closed. The knocking came again, polite, rhythmic. She forced herself closer, every step heavy with dread. The peephole revealed nothing but light, blinding, endless white. And then a voice, muffled but kind, called through the wood. "Ria? It's time to let us in." Her throat went dry. She stepped back slowly. There were no footprints on the porch, no shadows, only that voice, calm, patient, waiting. The journal flipped its own page. New words bled through the paper. "Don't open the door. You're not ready yet." Her heart pounded. Two voices, two commands. The house seemed to breathe around her, walls flexing faintly with sound that a whisper came from the stairs. A child's voice this time, soft and trembling. "You let them in last time, remember?" Ria turned sharply. A little girl stood at the top of the staircase, hair the same color as hers, wearing a faded white dress. Her eyes shimmered with the same impossible red light from the mirror. Memory hit like lightning. The swing, the laughter, the night her family disappeared. She hadn't left the house as a child. She'd become part of it. The girl smiled faintly and pointed toward the door. "If you open it, it starts again." Ria felt the truth settle in her stomach like ice. The house wasn't a prison, it was a loop. A self-healing memory, rebuilding its story over and over, using her as the anchor. The knocking stopped, the silence returned, and then a whisper directly in her ear, though no one was near her at all. "You've rebuilt us beautifully this time." The house exhaled. The walls shifted again, almost imperceptibly. Ria understood. It was alive, reborn, and she was its beating heart. The house had settled into an eerie calm, a perfect mimicry of peace. But beneath its silence, Ria could feel the rhythm, a low, steady pulse that matched her own heartbeat. It wasn't just alive, it was synchronized with her. Every flicker of emotion, every tremor of fear, rippled through its walls like waves in water. She moved through the rooms, each one pristine, almost inviting. The piano in the corner played a soft note by itself as she passed. The clock on the wall ticked backward. The chandelier above swayed in an invisible breeze that it wasn't haunting her now. It was performing that in the kitchen. She found the remnants of breakfast laid out on the table. Eggs steaming, coffee freshly poured, two chairs pulled out as if for guests. She reached out a trembling hand, touched the mug, still warm, and then, from the hallway mirror, a flicker. Her reflection smiled first. The image blinked out for a moment, replaced by dozens of faces, her own, her parents', the little girl, the man with the black eyes, all layered into a single reflection. Every version of her that the house had ever built. The journal sat open on the counter, its pages flipping by themselves until it stopped at a line she hadn't written. "You are the loop, Ria. The house only remembers what you refuse to forget." The air around her began to shimmer, faint distortions forming like heat haze. Time itself warped. Through the window, she could see the same sunrise repeating, the same birds flying by in the same pattern over and over again. She stumbled toward the door, desperate to break free. When her hand touched the handle, it burned, not with fire, but with memory. Flashes consumed her mind. Her childhood birthday, her parents vanishing into the mirror, her own voice whispering promises to something in the dark. She gasped and fell backward as the door slowly opened on its own. Light poured in, that same endless, blinding white she'd seen before. It was beautiful and wrong all at once. From inside the light, a faint outline took shape, human but hollow. It stepped forward, and its voice spoke with hundreds of overlapping tones. The house doesn't trap you. You built it. Every wall, every whisper, every death. You gave it shape. Rhea shook her head violently, backing away, tears streaking her face. No, I didn't. But the figure moved closer, its form flickering between shadow and reflection, between her and someone else. Every time you forget, it begins again. Every time you remember, it grows stronger. You are the memory. The walls trembled. The photos reappeared, dozens, hundreds, covering every surface, all showing her at different ages, in different rooms, repeating the same frozen expression, eyes wide, mouth half open, as if caught mid-realization. Rhea screamed. The sound didn't echo, it dissolved. The air swallowed it whole, then silence. The door closed gently on its own. The light vanished, and the house exhaled again, slower this time, deeper. Somewhere inside, the piano resumed playing. The swing outside began to move once more. Upstairs, in the mirror of her old bedroom, Rio appeared, smiling faintly, head tilted, eyes glowing red. "Welcome home," she whispered, and the loop began again. The house began again, as it always did. Morning light, soft air, calm silence. But something was different this time. The repetition wasn't perfect. The rhythm of the house's heartbeat had faltered, just slightly. Rhea stood in the foyer, motionless. The same sunlight poured through the windows, but her eyes were cold, distant, remembering more than she should. The loop was weakening. The journal lay on the table as before, but its pages were blank. No ink, no words, just the faint outline of where the writing used to be. It was as if the house had finally run out of memory that a single sound broke the quiet. A low, slow tap from upstairs. Not the soft patter of footsteps, but the precise rhythm of someone tapping glass. The mirror. Rhea followed the sound up the staircase, her fingers trailing along the banister. The house pulsed faintly beneath her touch, weaker now, like a dying heartbeat in her old bedroom. The cracked mirror waited, though it was no longer cracked. It had repaired itself, smooth and whole again, reflecting her perfectly. But when she moved, her reflection didn't. That it stood there, still as stone. And then it smiled. For the first time, Rhea didn't move away. She stepped closer until the glass misted faintly with her breath. "What are you?" she whispered. The reflection blinked. Then, in a voice that was her own but older, it answered, "The memory you couldn't destroy." The surface rippled. Behind the reflection, faint shapes began to emerge. Every version of her that had lived and died in the house. Some were screaming. Some were silent. All were waiting. "You think the house feeds on fear," the reflection said softly. "But it feeds on you. Your guilt. Your grief. Your endless need to fix what cannot be fixed." Rhea's throat tightened. "Then how do I end it?" The reflection tilted its head, almost gently. "You can't end memory. You can only accept it." The mirror pulsed once, and Rhea saw flashes. Her childhood self drawing the first outline of the house on paper, the same windows, the same walls. Her mother's voice saying, "Every home carries a piece of us, Rhea." And then she saw the truth. She hadn't found the house after her parents' death. She had built it, piece by piece, in her dreams and grief, willing it into existence. The house wasn't a haunting. It was her morning turned alive. Tears welled up, but she didn't look away. She pressed her hand to the mirror. The glass was warm, pulsing with life. "If I forget you," she whispered, "will it end?" The reflection smiled faintly. If you forget me, you'll forget yourself. The mirror began to tremble. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface once more, not from within this time, but from her touch. The room began to fade, the walls dissolving into shadow. The entire house shuddered like a dying animal. Downstairs, the piano fell silent. The heartbeat stopped. Rhea stepped through the mirror, and for the first time, it didn't pull her in. It let her pass. The reflection stayed behind, watching her go, whispering faintly as the world folded into darkness. Every ending is just another memory starting over. And then the mirror shattered, scattering 1,000 reflections into nothing. When the light returned, it was not dawn. It was white, endless, weightless, and still. Rhea stood barefoot on a floor that looked like marble, but when she glanced down, she realized it wasn't solid at all. Beneath her feet shimmered faint reflections, fragments of every moment she had ever lived inside the house. The ticking clock, the crying in the hallway, the piano's final note, and the faint sound of her mother's voice humming in the distance. The house was gone, but it wasn't destroyed. It had dissolved into memory itself, into the fabric of her own consciousness. You're still here, she whispered into the empty white. The echo came back softer. You're still here. She turned slowly. Behind her, floating in the light, were the door frames, thousands of them, each leading to a room she once lived in, dreamed of, or feared. Some open, some closed, some glowing faintly as if waiting for her to step through. Her reflection appeared again, only now it wasn't trapped in glass. It stood across from her, no longer a mirror image but a twin, calm, at peace. Is this death? Rhea asked. The twin shook her head gently. No, this is release. You were never dying. You were remembering. Rhea's voice trembled. Then what happens to the house? The reflection smiled faintly. It becomes what all memories become, part of the silence that keeps the world alive. The space around them began to hum, a low vibration that felt like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Rhea realized that every echo, every whisper, every flicker of the past she had feared was her own voice, stretched across time. All she had to do now was let go. She closed her eyes in the darkness. She whispered the last words she would ever speak inside the memory. I forgive you. A warmth spread through her chest, slow, infinite, and free. The light dimmed into a soft golden haze. When she opened her eyes, she was standing on a quiet hillside, real sunlight brushing her face. Birds sang in the distance. There was no house, no mirror, no loop. Only the wind, the grass, and the gentle weight of being alive. She looked down and saw the journal in her hand. But now, every page was filled. Every loop, every act, every heartbeat of the house had been written inside it. On the very last page, in handwriting that wasn't hers, was a single line. The memory ends when you stop reliving it. Rhea smiled through tears. She closed the book and set it down on the grass. As she walked away, the wind turned the pages slowly, one last time, before closing it for good. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peace. The end.